Hello, welcome back to my channel. Before we get into today's topic, I just want to address something in my last video. In that video, I explained how I think Tears of the Kingdom allows us to both take the infamous Legend of Zelda timeline seriously, if we choose to, and also to ignore it, if that's what we desire. This was because there are items from past games, from all three timelines, that are canonized in Tears of the Kingdom. But most, if not all, the descriptions refer to these events as legends, therefore letting us have our cake and eat it too. That's not what I want to address. I want to address how I described the people who strongly adhere to the timeline. I refer to them as purists, and I think that comes across quite derogatory, and that is not my intention. So I apologize if that offended anyone. I should have picked my words a little more carefully. I should have said adherence or something like that. Because, as many other Zelda tubers have reported on, in the recent Famitsu interview, producer Mr. Aonuma and Tears of the Kingdom director Mr. Fujibayashi stated that the series was, pardon the bad Google translation, quote, designed to create a story and world that will not break the bank, among other things. I take this as confirming that the developers take the previous games, timeline and all, seriously, and that the era of the wilds is still a part of this continuity. I still think my reasoning stands from the previous video. If the timeline and lore inconsistencies harm your enjoyment of the series, Nintendo's given you an easy out to enjoy the story as you see fit. But where's the fun in that? Enough about that though. Let's get to the topic of this video. Malanya, the horse god. This unsettling figure has been covered from an in-game perspective quite well by Nintendo Black Crisis and Super Geek Bros. I definitely watched their videos during my research into this one, so check them out as well. After this one, of course. They both came up with some interesting theories regarding his origin and nature. But let me recap what we experienced, or what I've experienced, in both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, the only two games where this character appears. Malanya is trapped within a flower bud that is identical to the ones that the great fairies are found within. Once freed, this deity has the power to resurrect horses when given an appropriate offering, and in Tears of the Kingdom, he is also shown to be able to increase the abilities of horses when offered specific meals. Malanya has a rather threatening appearance and demeanor, and he seems to know it, as he will jokingly suggest eating Link or harming him in other ways if he senses that Link has done his horses harm. Another in-game context related to Malanya are the structures of the stables, which feature a giant horse head adorned with a patchwork of cloths, very reminiscent of the deity. Most Hylians that are associated with horses know of Malanya and have at least heard legends of the horse god. His legend is so prominent there's a lake named after him, very near to his original location in Breath of the Wild. However, before the events of Tears of the Kingdom, he abandons this location for Bloodleaf Lake in the Akala region. His appearance is striking, and I am in love with his design. And while I was drawing this artwork that you see me making, I was really struggling to see just exactly what I'm looking at. His head consists of a wooden horse mask with cloth-like hair. His clawed, sinewy hands are disembodied. His body seems to be haphazardly assembled from strips of patterned cloth. Golden jewelry adorns his fingers, as well as a prominent necklace or collar that's also made of gold. There's no physical body to speak of other than the hands and a human-like spinal column. Overall, his appearance strikes me as being inspired by the designs of indigenous people across the world, but primarily Native American and African people, with bold colors, large prominent shapes like triangles, and other patterns that are fairly consistent with these cultures. So that is who Malanya is from an in-game perspective, but what has influenced his character from the real world? When searching for horse deities and horse guardians, the gallo-roman deity Epona came up as the most prominent. It's a name most of you will probably know. This was noted by Super Geek Bros and Nintendo Black Crisis. However, Epona is generally regarded as a goddess of fertility and bounty, as well as a protector of, quote, horses, mules, and asses, end quote. Fertility and bounty are not traits associated with Malanya, and if anything, he has more aspects with consumption, requiring food as a payment for his magic. However, Epona being a guardian of horses is notable, and it's fairly common knowledge in lore circles that, yes, this is where the name of Link's original horse comes from. Another note is that in the Japanese translation, Malanya's name is Marun, a reference to Malon from Ocarina of Time, the original caretaker of Epona. When researching possible Japanese influences, the Hindu and Buddhist deity Hayagriva came up. Bear with me, as I am no scholar in Hinduism or Buddhism, or Shintoism for that matter. I'm only going to recount things that seem relevant to Malanya. I also cannot possibly speak on every aspect of Hinduism and Buddhism, as there are so many traditions and sects within each religion, and my understanding of them is merely surface level. I would absolutely love to be corrected if I make any errors in my summary, and both of these belief systems are something that I want to continue learning more about. But anyways, Hayagriva has an extensive history originating in Hinduism. In Hinduism, Hayagriva is a wrathful avatar of Vishnu, one of Hinduism's principal deities, and this avatar has a horse's head. Similarities between the Hindu Hayagriva and Malanya seem to end there. However, Buddhism also features a deity named Hayagriva. In Japanese Mahayana Buddhism, Hayagriva is a wrathful aspect of, forgive me for my pronunciation, Avalokiteshvara, a prominent bodhisattva, which a bodhisattva is a being who is on the path to becoming a Buddha. He is the protector of the Buddhist animal realm, or the Buddhist realm of beings whose state of mind is animal-like. These wrathful deities, or fierce deities, wink, wink, of which Hayagriva belongs, destroy opposition to the enlightened path and can be called upon by people experiencing any sort of hardship that is preventing them from continuing towards nirvana. Hayagriva is usually depicted in a monstrous form, surrounded by fire, sword in hand, with a horse's head upon his own head, or heads, depending on the artist rendition. What does all this have to do with Malanya, aside from the horse head imagery? Well, in some folk beliefs in Japan, Hayagriva is also worshipped as the guardian deity of horses, due to his name, which means horse head, or having the neck of a horse. So let's reel it in, bring it all back to Malanya. We have a horse god who has a fearsome appearance, portends to be wrathful, although he never follows through on his wrath when interacting with Link. He has the head of a horse, and he is the guardian deity of horses throughout Hyrule. Maybe my tinfoil hat is malfunctioning, but I see Hayagriva as a better influence for Malanya as a character than Epona. And truthfully, the answer most likely lies somewhere in between, but I think I'm onto something here. Before I wrap up, I want to discuss what even is Malanya. He is known as the horse god, and that is fairly self-explanatory. But as we noted earlier, he begins his interactions trapped within a flower bud akin to the Great Fairies. Is he the same kind of being as the Great Fairies? In my research, I turned to the original Japanese wording. I had the help of some friendly Redditors over on r/TrueZelda in translating the original names in Japanese of both the Great Fairies and Malanya. I suspected that given the similarities, they might be referred to in the same way. Perhaps the Malanya would be the horse fairy, and in English it was just translated to horse god for whatever localization reason. But I was wrong. The Great Fairies, and fairies in Legend of Zelda in general, are referred to as yosei, which is a word that in modern times refers to the Western idea of a fairy or a sprite. When we take a look at Melanya's title in Japanese, he is not referred to as a yosei. The kanji of his title mean horse kami. Kami can be used synonymously with God. And however, it brings with it some interesting implications. Kami are generally thought of as the spiritual forces behind whatever object, idea, or place they represent, sometimes having a personification. So the English translation holds true that he is a god or kami. And that's why I do not believe he is the same as the Great Fairies. He's not just the kami of horses, but everything horse related. He is one with the horses. He's one with horse riding. And that could explain why he understands them, why he can resurrect them, and why he can increase their power when he replenishes his own energy by eating food. So, in the game, he is referred to in both translations as a god or kami. And this is distinct from the Great Fairies. However, let's take a listen to the soundtrack that plays when you are interacting with Malanya. That's right, that is Epona's song played over the Great Fairy Fountain theme. I alluded to my belief that this is a distinct choice, so there has to be more connection to the Great Fairies other than the flower bud that Malanya emerges from. Perhaps he is a greater Great Fairy due to his abilities and powers over all of the horses in the land, which fairies seem to have powers over all the clothing in the land. So maybe the Great Fairies could be thought of as kamis themselves, albeit lesser kami than Malanya, because they do not possess powers over life. They do not possess powers to enhance the physical attributes of creatures, but they do possess powers over clothing and armor. Maybe this is why the people of Hyrule make a distinction between the Great Fairies, not referring to them as gods or kami, and Malanya, who clearly has a power over life, at least in respect to horses. But to summarize, yes, he's similar to the Great Fairies, yet he's a higher being than them. He is a literal god of the horses. And Hayagriva is much more likely to be the inspiration behind Malanya's character rather than the goddess Epona. Well, if you made it this far, I sincerely thank you for watching. I learned so much throughout this research process, so if you enjoyed the vid, don't be afraid to subscribe. If you liked it, why not give it a thumbs up? If you disliked it, give me that thumbs down. I'm not afraid, and feedback is important. And most importantly, if you think I got anything wrong about the belief systems I talked about, or you think that my theory is completely off base, I want to know about it in the comments. Help me shed my ignorance. Check my links in the description if you wish, and until next time, I'll see you later.